The Jacksonville Jaguars have a new brain trust, new players, and new parts, and I think it leads to new results. I'll tell you why here on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jaguars, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
No doubt about that. It is your team every day here on Locked On Jaguars. We thank you for making us your first listen. We're glad to be here on the Locked On Jaguars podcast, where we give you the biggest stories off season and heading into training camp about the Jacksonville Jaguars season. And today will be no different. We'll talk about some of those new parts. I'll get to that in just a second. I want to thank the everydayers for joining us each and every day. You can be one too. All you got to do is come back and I'll give you a reason to. First and foremost, today's show is sponsored by GameTime. Listen, download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. GameTime's going to have all the tickets for the Jaguars games this season. Make sure you tap into that location. All right, here's what we're going to do, man. We're going to discuss the Jaguars. We'll talk about getting a different result. How do you do it? Well, you got a bunch of new parts. At the end, we'll talk about the new engine. The new engine being the brain trust. The engine has a hood on it. You don't always see what's there, but you need it to move around. So we'll talk about the new players right smack in the middle. But at the top of the show, we're going to start talking about the new coach. And the new coach is a part of the brain trust. But in this case, I wanted to separate it a little bit because Liam Cohen has his own identity, and we're going to park right there for a minute. I believe this was a home run hire for the Jacksonville Jaguars. I believe that when I saw it, and then I really believed it once I got around the team in minicamp and OTAs, heard them speak. I really do like the balance that the entire staff, but particularly Cohen, the balance between confidence and communication. A lot of times we confuse people that are very, very confident with people that have to sort of conceal and hide things and keep everything on a need-to-know basis, right? Sometimes confidence is people that are willingly transparent because they know that knowing certain things will not make them vulnerable to anything. I think Liam Cohen balanced that out very well so far here with the Jaguars, as well as the rest of the coaches. They ain't giving you too much, but they're giving you football stuff when you talk to them. They're answering questions. The answers are not cliche. The apparent communication between the players and the coaches, it's the same. We can kind of get an idea of what it's like to be around those guys if you're a player. I always tried to, in the past, when I talked about this team, make sure that I don't put too much of myself into it. You guys have heard me say this. I'm not privy to certain meetings. Everything isn't about what you appear to see, because I did not know some things after the fact. I didn't know those players basically didn't like Doug Peterson. You could go by their play and say, well, you can tell they don't respect him very much. But I had no idea that they had that much disdain for him. I did not know that they had that much dislike and disdain for Ryan Nielsen. But apparently they did, right? And they talked about communicating and guys to talk, who I guess could explain things better or would be more down to earth. And Doug wasn't really that old. And Nielsen ain't really that old when it comes to old coaches. You would think they'd be talking about like Sean Payton or maybe Sean Payton, Doug Peterson might be the same age. But, the Pete Carrolls of the world, the old Tom Coughlin way of doing things. Even with Doug Marrone when he was here, everyone thought that because Doug was talking like a New York cab driver and hung out and was cool, that he got along with players and he dropped an F-bomb every now and then. Those dudes got sick of that too. Because I think we look at it from a surface level and think that this is cool or that is cool. Well, you're probably doing the same thing with Liam Cohen, because the way he carries himself, he wears the Jordans, he kind of walks around the way the young fellas do that they can relate to a little bit. It's not the surface level stuff that I believe that makes him someone that has started this thing off the right way. All that's good. It's really the substance of what they're doing and what they're saying. When you're a teacher, like he is and all of these coaches are, when you're teaching, You're telling them what they don't know. You're teaching them something that they don't know. You're showing them how to do things the right way as opposed to doing things the wrong way. And when you're doing that, you have their undivided attention. See, I think people don't see these young players as folks that actually want and crave direction. When you think that way, as in, like when Trent Baalke told me about Jourdan Jones, and I hope somebody says they say it ain't true, because there's somebody that y'all definitely will believe that was standing right there with me when he said it. He just singled Jourdan out when I was talking about something else and says, yeah, rough around the edges, got a lot to work on. I didn't ask you what that man doesn't do well. I didn't ask you if he was rough around the edges. I didn't ask you anything about his personality. And see, the thinking is that when you go into a relationship looking at someone's flaws as if it's we got to overcome this, see, that tells me right there. Like I said to myself, as soon as Trent walked away, I turned to the former player / media member. And no, it ain't Leon. I know everybody gonna think it's Leon. No, I stood there and I said, the dude looked at me and said, that was weird. I said, yeah, it was, because I ain't asked him about none of that stuff. But it shows you how when you look at people a certain way, you feel like you have to teach them a certain way, and you don't. These dudes love football. That's what it's about. And the common thing that these coaches have with these players is, hey man, we ain't worried about all that. This is what we're football. And in football, we're going to do this, and this. Now you got to be here on time. You got to learn. You got to want it. They want it. They crave it. Folks think kids don't like discipline. Are you crazy? They love discipline. Why do you think kids sign up and get hooked on playing little league sports? They want to be a part of something. They want to be a part of something where they're growing, where they trust the people that's teaching them. And I think Liam Cohen and that staff so far have done that. They look like your favorite college professor who you don't want to disappoint. They're like your favorite college professor who he'll still write you a demerit, or he'll still write you up when you do something wrong. And he'll give you that referral and he'll send you out of here. You're not going to disrupt all of this, because we're trying to go somewhere. So you saw in the draft and you saw in free agency, one of the things that the Brain Trust, who we'll talk about later, what they did, they got football playing Jessies who are also very, very talented. And ain't nobody worried about somebody dancing too much. And ain't nobody worrying about somebody's language. And ain't nobody worrying about the fact that this guy likes to do that. As long as whatever you do does not interfere in the big picture and the learning that has to happen. And I'm saying this without the benefit of even talking about play calling or the ability. I ain't talking about formations. I'm not talking about alignment. I'm talking about something else here. And these are the things that we sort of complained about in the past, but when we were complaining about them and trying to describe it, we obviously didn't know of the discourse that was going on behind the scenes. So that's why, even though it might seem small to people, I'm going to make this a big, I'm going to blow it up now, because this is something that they didn't have before. They didn't have those lines of communication that are strong as they are now. They didn't have the teaching aspect of it as much as they had the, I'm going to motivate you to do it, based on a little bit of fear. This is, I want you to do it because I want you to be at your absolute best. But if you can't get it done, I'm going to have to get somebody else love you. But this is more of what it is. And that's why this feels a little bit different. I'll talk about the new players and the parts, the people that are actually going to be put in position to make these plays for the Jaguars. We'll do all of that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, today's show is sponsored and brought to you by GameTime. We've all been there, logging on early and waiting forever for concert tickets to go on sale, only to lose your spot for a show you've been dying to see. Live music should be about making memories, not dealing with stress or ticket shopping. That's where GameTime comes in. GameTime makes getting concert tickets faster and easier than ever. Prices actually drop as it gets closer to showtime, and you can save up to 60% off with the killer last-minute deals. Man, I know I'm just tired of scrolling all the time. I just want to see how much the ticket costs and where my seat's going to be, and Game Time can always give me that information. Take the guesswork out of buying concert and show tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, moving and grooving here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day. I am Tony Wiggins, host of the Locked On Jaguars podcast, talking about how we're going to get a different result. You sure cannot. I remember the first person, I think one of the first people I heard say that old saying that doing the same thing and expecting a different result is the definition of insanity. I think it was Wayne Weaver, who I saw at OTAs. Wayne has done a lot for the city. I mean, one of the things when he dropped that gem, I'm not going to say he had created that, but I'm going to tell you, it was the first time I really heard it where it resonated with me, that you can't keep doing the same things over and over. And sometimes by doing the same things, we're not talking about the actions that you take. We're talking about the people that you do it with. It's hard to get people to change their stripes, even when they want to try, like old school GMs and old school coaches like Trent and Doug, like even when they know their lives depend on it, man, they can't change. And sometimes they're not meant to change. Sometimes they are meant to be changed, because you're literally asking someone to do something that's not really what they want to do, but what they feel like they have to do, which means they're not being themselves. They're not tapping into their superpower. Their superpower has a limit to it. Their superpowers is good. They got them to the NFL. You reach the pinnacle of your profession, but you can't take us any further. You really can't take us any further with each other. But I'm glad the Jaguars eventually decided that we're not going to try to figure out which one of these is the wrong thing. We're just going to get rid of the whole thing and start a whole nother new thing. And that's what they did when they got a new coach and they got new players. And eventually, well, they got a new coach and eventually a new entire brain trust to go with that coach. That's why I put Liam Cohen first, because Liam Cohen was hired before James Gladstone was hired as the GM. Liam Cohen was hired officially before Tony Baselli was named senior executive VP, or whatever the title is, EVP, executive vice president. They might have known it was going to happen, but it didn't come to us because everyone wanted to know who that dude was going to be that gave these marching orders every single day for the players. And as much as those upper management guys are there, when you're around it, make no mistake about it. That cat with that little cut off sleeves, like my man Jim Tressel, Liam Cohen runs the show. The other side of it, before we get to the brain trust, are the new players. From the day that they went out in free agency and got Jourdan Lewis and Eric Murray, I said this is different. Not that those guys are the type of people that are all pros or anything like that, but they have this toughness about them, right? It's kind of what they were saying with Darnell Savage, but it's a little bit different here with me. Dallas couldn't keep Jourdan Lewis. They wanted to bad, but they couldn't. They got too many other people they're paying and their structure. There ain't no way we're going to be able to keep him. He was the heartbeat of that team, man, in a sense, behind Michael Parsons. All I've heard since he left were people talking about Jourdan Lewis. That's all about him. Eric Murray, quiet, unassuming, but a big part of, if you go back and look, made big plays even in the playoffs as a member of the secondary. And here's the thing, there's a commonality about them. Watch how they play through the whistle. Not saying that they're perfect players, but they play through the whistle constantly. And teams that have a bunch of players that do those type things always seem to win, always seem to compete, always seem to put themselves in a position. Now, you notice I just named 2 role players. They added 4 offensive linemen who are all role players, right? But better role players than the guys who they were expecting to be all world. Like you replacing Brandon Sheriff, who you were paying like he was an all pro and he wasn't, but you replace him with, in my opinion, a better player, and Pat McCary, who can do more things, who gives you more versatility. Chuma Edoga, guy who started some games around the National Football League, is coming in here and he's pushing to compete with Anton Harrison at right tackle. James Haynes is going to be your starting center, all right? And then you'll let the rookie center from USC fight it out with Luke Fortner. All of these things that they did, adding Diami Brown, somebody that they believed in, that even though they already on the roster, they had Brian Thomas Jr., who's the top 10 wide receiver. They said, no, we need another guy. Gone are the days where they're going to sit here and go, we got BTJ, we just need to compliment him a little bit with a slot guy. And some of the things that you would almost think that the way that these teams are being built by bad GMs, that they listen to fans on Twitter. We just need a possession guy. We got a speed guy. Scrap that. How about we just get a bunch of fast people? How about we just line every receiver position we have is somebody that we think can score a touchdown when they touch the ball. And that's what they did when they got Diami Brown. How about getting rid of these tight ends that are either a move tight end or a blocking tight end? And how about just get a complete tight end, right? So we got one in Britton Strange. Get 3 more complete players behind them. Even if they don't have a whole bunch of production, they give us the versatility we want. You see how it works? And then we ain't even mentioned Travis Hunter. How about we trade next year's first-round pick and a boatload of these picks in this draft that nobody really likes, and we get a dude that would be, we move up 2 spots and take a guy that would be the number 2 pick in any draft that you can remember. Yeah, that one. We're going to make sure we get something this year that is very, very rare. There's like 3 or 4 players, maybe 3. So the Jags moved up several spots. But my thing is, there were only a few players that you knew had the potential in any draft to be a difference maker, and the Jaguars got one. And he embodies everything that you have heard me talk about from about minute 3 up until now. He is going to be himself. He is going to play the game. He loves the game. You're going to have to keep him out of the facility. You got to keep him off of the practice field and add this to it. He is supremely talented and gifted. One of the most gifted college football players we have ever seen. One of the highest ranked high school players that has ever been ranked. And now he's a Jacksonville Jaguar. And it makes a difference. And you're adding him. You're adding him. Brian Thomas Jr. is arguably the best player on this team. And you're adding him to a group that features that dude. And you're adding Travis Hunter to a group that features those 2 dudes I just talked about that play like their feet are on fire. And Tyson Campbell is in the best shape of his life. I'm not saying it's all going to be perfect and it's all going to work out. I don't know. But I trust Anthony Campanile enough right now. And I trust all of those coaches that they're going to do the right thing. I really, really do. I got to talk about the new engine, though, man. The part of this thing that you never see, right? You see a car, you can hear the engine every now and then. And some of them you can't. Some engines are quiet. And you see a car, you see all the moving parts, you see who crosses the finish line. But I'm talking about the dudes in the crew. I'm talking about the people behind the scene and what they mean to this organization. And I'll get on that in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. You know, in the past, when the Jacksonville Jaguars played games, I always had to say this, and I've said it, and you may have heard some variation of it, where you look at the players and the matchups and go, okay. And then you look at the coaching matchups, okay. But then there's something else. Like, who are they for real, right? What are they made up of? And too many times I have heard analysts who are either former players or former coaches, or someone who is near and dear to a former coach like Mike Lombardi when he was with Belichick, and people giving their opinions on the Jaguars, and they said they're soft. They're a soft football team. That doesn't mean you don't play hard, because other coaches have said the Jaguars played hard even when they were bad. I'm not talking about playing hard. I'm talking about soft. There are soft people that will try until the death, and you know what? They don't make it. I ain't talking about trying to the death. I'm talking about, who are you? Who are you intangibly? Who are you really on the inside? And then the former coach and the former GM even came out and said that they were soft. They didn't say it like that. They said we're not physical enough. That means you're soft. If your team is soft, I want to look at who created it. I want to look at the DNA. I want to do some labs. And when I did labs, I found out that who was soft was Trent and Doug. Because if they weren't soft, they wouldn't have built the soft team. If they weren't soft, they wouldn't have had communication issues. See, that's what strength is. Strength ain't about the bravado and how you act outwardly. It's about what you do on the inside. There's a lot of young people realizing right now, I see videos of it all the time. They say, hey, man, the gangbangers, man, that we looked up to, those weren't the real G's. Those weren't the real hard people. The real hard people was the dudes that stayed out of trouble, that went to work, that stood right in the middle of that stuff and didn't let them get distracted. Dudes 40 years old telling young people this now. Well, you know what? It's the same thing with football. A lot of times these dudes that talk tough with their raspy voice and act tough and be stone-faced and tell reporters that they wouldn't know what, they ain't going to explain it because they don't know what's going on anyway. Usually those are the softest people on earth, but they act hard, right? Even in coaching. You ever notice how many times the coaches who win, look at Andy Reid. Y'all think Andy Reid's a pushover? Howie Roseman don't look like he'll scare you to death, does he? So when we look at these players and these coaches that are now here, they look like the guys that win who don't have a facade. Sean McVay doesn't have a facade, does he? Les Snead, all of these places that the Steelers. Well, Mike Tomlin looks tough a little bit, but you get my point. I think the new engine has what it takes because they're smart, they're driven. James Gladstone is smart and driven, but he also knows, and I'm not going to say to stay in his lane, but he also knows, and he clearly identifies, and he's told you what his superpower is. When you know what your superpower is, you know what your superpower is not. And you have the humility to let somebody else. And I'm not saying just let somebody else appear to be in control, but let somebody else tell you something so that your superpower can be ignited. I think Tony Boselli is a bit the same way. Tony hasn't been, anybody that thought Tony was going to be like this totalitarian, they were wrong. And I told people from the conversations that we've had over the years that if Boselli got a chance to do this, that he would do it the correct way. And so far, good start. You hear him, but you don't hear him. You don't hear him drowning out the voice of the GM. You don't hear him drowning out Liam Cohen's voice, but you see his presence. And it's not just because he's 6'7". You see his presence because if you talk to him enough, everything that he talks about when it comes to winning, think about the player he was. In that short span of time, he's in the Hall of Fame because he was great. But he wasn't. Tony was a 2-star recruit out of high school. You know what made him great? The discipline and the love of the game to go along with his talent. And then he put the work in to allow that talent to be manifested into what it is now. And it's a Hall of Fame career, a short-lived career, but he got banged up. But anybody that can have that kind of effect in that shorter period of time, going from the fact that he was a 2-star recruit in high school, kind of probably understands and knows a process. And he understands the patience that it takes. And he understands what that work ethic looks like because he played in an era with the Jaguars when those dudes came to work, even the ones you criticize. Somebody got on Jimmy about some of the things that he did back in the day. Yeah, but you ain't say nothing about none of that stuff when Jimmy was running out there on that field and scoring those touchdowns. So my point is regardless of who you were, where you are, whether you were at a Bible study meeting in Marsh Landing or partying at Kevin Hardy's house in Queens Harbor, when they came to work and they had one cause. So somebody that experiences stuff like that now for this organization is there and he sees it and he understands it, right? And he knows what it's supposed to look like. And even he stands back and allows the coaches to do their thing. At minicamp and OTAs, I'm going to tell you something. There's no presence lingering over the team except the coach. Sully, Gladstone, they're there, but they aren't. When they're on that practice field, this belongs to Liam Cohen and Anthony Campanile and Coach Greg Udinski. That's who is running this show out here on that field. And those veteran coaches, the Edgar Bennett's of the world. All of these coaches are doing. Sean Starrett, These guys are coaching and these players are listening, and they are dialed in to those coaches and what those coaches are telling them and what those coaches are listening to from them. Communication right now, I believe, is at an all-time high over there. And the leadership is at an all-time high over there. This is the first time I believe Shad really don't have to be. We used to always criticize Shad and say he needs to be looking in on everything. And he probably should always still do that. But I don't find it necessary to push that out there anymore. I don't find it necessary to say he needs to keep an eye on things. No, he probably does. But I'm telling you, I don't find it necessary to let that be at the front of my thinking and at the front of my conversations, because there ain't nothing to watch right now, Jack. They got this covered. What does it mean for wins and losses? We don't know, but it's a good start, man, because it's the place where you're supposed to be. Now guys still got to go out and execute. Now they still have to transfer training camp. Now they still have to remain healthy. Now guys still have to do what's right there. But at least the canvas that they're starting this process on is clean. It's already been etched. It's already been bleached. So whatever they put on now is what they are going to be. But when you're putting that stuff on a bad foundation and a dirty canvas, you can't expect it to come out clean. That's why you can wash your car, you can paint it, you can overhaul it down. But a real car person, you know what he'll do? Turn it on. Pop the hood. I want to see what's under there. Put it up. Let me look. We're going to look up underneath it to see, you rusting under here or what? No, the Jaguars foundation has been fixed. And I give credit to Shad Khan for doing it. And now we have a clean blank canvas that we can start over. And I'm expecting different results. Wins and losses, yeah, that's important. Of course it is. But prior to wins and losses, you better take care of this foundation first. You better take care of the communication first. You better take care of how these things. And I'm not telling you that they're letting us know things now that we didn't know before. No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there ain't nothing behind the scenes we need to be knowing, because everything that they're putting out there is enough for you to get whatever you need. And the way that this thing is going so far, I'm telling you, Jack, man, y'all are in a good spot. I had a national dude on the other day, Matt Williams. Matt Williams said he likes what they're doing. Everyone does. Everyone's complimentary of it. But there's still enough unknown that we have to tune in. We have to go to training camp. We have to watch this stuff, and don't rush it, but just watch it. Watch it, and it'll help make you understand this process a little bit better. And I think it'll help you appreciate it, especially later on when that record might not be what you want it to be, but the team looks differently. And they start making a push for the playoffs and push for winning that division. You'll get a better appreciation of it if you break it down and look at it all this way. We're going to keep giving you this coverage. Training camp kicks in next week, right? So next week, of course, you're going to get probably more than 5 things here from Locked On Jaguars. You'll be getting way more than that. This is going to be a busy, busy year, and I got something real special for you guys, too, coming up that we'll announce later on. But until then, and then the Locked On NFL Top 100 will be released Wednesday, July 16th at 10 a.m. on Locked On Sports Today. Now, listen, the NFL Top 100 was voted on by the NFL hosts of Locked, and there are some stunners. Don't miss where your favorite players were ranked. Subscribe to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast. Man, listen, it is off the chain this year, all right? And we're going to do a reaction episode from all of that too. So make sure you tap in to the Locked On NFL Top 100. It will be released on Wednesday, July 16th. You guys take care, man. New hope, new parts, new results. It's coming. I just want you guys to be happy this year, and I know you will. We'll see you later here on Locked On Jaguars.